Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with a 10 cards 1 kit video for Scrappin' for Less August 2018 card kit. And it's not really 10 cards, there's like a whole bunch. There's 20, well, I made 25 cards, but I don't think they all get in the video. It was a huge, awesome kit that I really enjoyed working with, but I will give you a ton of ideas for using this kit in the video. To get started, I decided to work with collection 1 with the dogs because I really liked that stamp set from Newton's Nook. It's an exclusive. It's called Puppy Pals, and there's 2 little dogs sharing a stick, like they're both holding it in their mouths. It is really intense to color, though. There's a lot of image, and it's big. So I only colored 1 of them, and I did all of my coloring off screen. I do use Copic coloring most of the time. And I found that it just takes a really long time to include the coloring and include the card making in these videos, so I don't include the coloring. I don't consider it necessarily a coloring tutorial so much as like an ideas for a kit tutorial. So just that logic there, and you'll see things just kind of come on magically colored on the screen. I also am using some of the sketches that are included in, well, not included in the card kit, but like sent to people who buy the card kit so that you can have some inspiration. They're available on the website. And I did this because I want to show you how those are useful, but also because it saves me a lot of time in being super original with every card. If you're going to make 25 cards, you're going to run out of ideas, or at least I am. So having some of these layouts just sort of told to you, or like as a jumping off point, because I don't always follow them exactly. They don't always include measurements anyway. So anyway, there was this like Becky Higgins Project Life card in this collection as well. And if you cut it in half, it worked really well with the Mojo Monday sketch that was included. And I decided that I would use my colored dogs for one of these, and then I would try to think of a different way of using the dogs for the second card. And one of the reasons I picked the Distress Edges dies is because you could use just a basic circle, and even if you don't have basic circle dies, you could trace the circle and cut it out. I picked the Distress Edge ones from Cat Scrappiness just because I kind of reminded me of how like dogs and cats like to chew on things. And I know people always think of dogs as chewing on things. When I was little, I had a cat that really chewed on particularly pictures. For whatever reason, like printed photographs, if you didn't frame them, she loved to chew on them. So it reminded me of her too. I forgot to do my stamping before I adhered down my blue distressed circle. So I just took the piece that I cut the circle out of and basically used it as like a reverse mask. And it's protecting all of my card base. If you also threw out that piece, you could just cut the circle from a piece of scrap paper and do the same thing where you're just kind of laying it over the rest of your card. Or you could gently peel off your circle, do your stamping, and adhere it back to the card. But just kind of wanted to show you that tip for when you make mistakes like I just did. I picked a blue Hero Arts ink and I stamped this down. I found that it stamped really well, even though I wasn't using my Misty, which often I will want to use in case I mess up, but everything stamped beautifully, so that was really good to see. Sometimes it can be hard if you're doing solid stamps, but since I did it as an outline stamp, that worked well. I also really like Distress Oxide inks for solid stamping, and I like that they can do 2 things, and I'll talk about them later in the video because I will use them for ink blending, I think. So the particular group of paper that I got included these cut-apart sheets, which had sentiments and pictures and stuff on them. When you get Scrappin' for Less kits, you get a small amount of a paper pad. You don't get any entire paper pad. You get a few sheets from 4 different paper pads, in fact. And that's one thing that I like about Scrappin' for Less kits, because I find that sometimes if I really like a paper pad and I get the whole thing, I get a little bit bored of it before I can finish it. Although I personally have done a ton of 6x6 paper pad tutorials where I've used up the entire paper pad. It's 100% possible. It can be really fun, but it can be quite a challenge too, and I don't want to do it with every paper pad I like. So this is a fun alternative as well. And for these other cards with these cut-aparts, I started trying to be basically inspired by the scraps that I had started to create. So in cutting out the specific size pieces for the card sketches, because the sketches you can access when you buy the kit and you can see them even without buying the kit. They're on the Scrappin' for Less website. When you're cutting out specific pieces of paper for them, sometimes you're left with odd little things, and it can be easy to just sort of put those away and not think about it. But then when I find it more challenging to, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I like to use my scraps right away. I like to make a bunch of cards with them and not just sort of store them away, because then often they won't get used, or I'll go to the collection thinking I have like some really big fun pieces to work with and find out that I only have scraps left, and it's a bit discouraging, and I kind of move on to a different collection. So using my scraps instantly often means that they get used better, and I enjoy working with the collection more. But that's just a personal thing. The stamp that I'm using for the sentiments for these is from the banana split level of the kit, which is no longer available. There are double dip level of the kit left, but the banana split is sold out. However, I know there's many people who already have the kit, who already ordered the banana split level, that are going to watch this video to get some inspiration. So, but most of the things that I use will be from the double dip. So you can still, purchase the kit and feel like it will work out well. I just liked that no bones about it, you're the best sentiment, because it will work well for the kinds of cards I like to make, which are cards that are general and can be donated to Cards for Hospitalized Kids, where they just have this encouraging sentiment with a little joke inside. And I do have pet themed jokes that are on my blog as well. And so I'll link to that for you in case you're interested in learning more about donating your cards, or if you're interested in getting those sentiments. With this next card, I also started using some card kit elements and a sketch. I use the Project Life card as just a simple mat, and I'm kind of being inspired by the Operation Right Home sketch, but I'm not following it too specifically. One thing I did want to point out is that little red piece that I'm tucking under, it has the hole from the top of the paper pad in it, but since that's going to be covered, I'm able to use up that scrap that might otherwise think, you think, oh, I can't use it because it's messed up with that. But if you just kind of strategically place it, sometimes you can get a little bit more out of a sheet of paper. And for instance, that red sheet of paper was pretty valuable to me because it was one of the few solid papers. You could, of course, use the solid cardstock in the kit. Speaking of the cardstock in the kit, I don't use a ton of it. I do use a few, or like a bit of one piece of the cardstock, but it's really high quality cardstock, which I like to kind of save for different types of projects. And rather than just like a simple pattern paper card making and layers and that kind of thing, I like to try to use the pattern paper for the layers. And the two pieces are like Nina 110 pound cardstock, which is awesome because then you can do all your stamping and coloring on it. I will often also use Michael's Recollection cardstock for Copic coloring, but it's nice to know that you have that option. Now, if I wasn't going to try to make 25 cards or a whole bunch of cards essentially in a few, really 2 days is usually what I do to record these videos, if that, I would probably have colored in the set of dogs a few more times, and I could use that image here instead of using the cut apart piece. So I think that even though not everyone's going to get the cut aparts because you might get slightly different sheets of pattern paper than I do, you can replace a lot of them with some colored images from the kit. Instead, it would just kind of slow you down a bit in the sense that you would have to color them in. But I'm also using, again, here scraps, and that's a cut apart that I didn't see myself using the picture side of it. So I turned it over, it was a semi-solid, and I was able to kind of use it up in that way too. I do find that sometimes when you get those cut apart sheets, they make really fast, easy cards. And sometimes you're like, what would I use the sentiment for? Oh, right, these are kind of for scrapbookers and not necessarily for card makers. So you'll see this sentiment on it. It's one of those all you need is love and a dog, which I could see using on a card. But like, if somebody got a dog, it could be kind of like a congratulations on your new addition or something. But it's not the most obvious card sentiment. It would make sense in a scrapbook though. So, just something that I like to remind myself sometimes when I'm going like, who is using these things? And I'm trying to figure out how to make use of them and not just toss them. I'm going to use that same technique that I used earlier where I just stamped the dog on a semi-solid piece and I didn't do all the coloring. And this time I'm in fact going to incorporate the little heart from the stamp set as well so that gets a little bit of love and use. It saves me from the time of having to color it in and shows you a different way of using that. And this time I just picked a Memento tuxedo. I always want to say Memento tuxedo black because I stamp in it so often. Anyway, that's just a memory thing. I used a Memento ink this time. And my point with that is that any dye ink will do. Just grab an ink from your stash and you'll be able to do that as long as it's the right color. You don't need to have every brand of every color, etc. to make cute cards. Here, I also was able to stamp the sentiment right over my image too because of that tone-on-tone look. And I'm using those scraps of paper that have the hole in them. They don't have to be useless. I don't have to make them smaller. I can just cover it up. So that's how I'm kind of deciding how to lay my strips, by how can I lay them in a way that's interesting and also very strategically covers those holes. I'm actually wanting them not to line up perfectly. I don't want it to, like this, the two side ones to be at the same height. I want them to all be at a different height so that it just kind of looks fun and playful. What I enjoyed a lot about this card kit is there were good elements of the kit to work for more masculine and more feminine cards. A lot of times, and I've said this plenty of times before on my channel, it's so easy to make pretty feminine whatever cards. And obviously, not only girls like those cards, but it can be more of a challenge to make something that isn't overly pretty when you're crafting because, most crafters are girls. There are some uber talented male crafters out there for sure, though. And so, we like glitter and sequins, and some girls like that and some don't. And whatever, it's rant, but I just appreciate a variety of supplies is my point. Next up, I wanted to work with this sketch here that you see. I think it's an MFT sketch, but it's off there on the left of my paper. Oh, TSG. I don't know what that stands for. It's that sketch. It has this there's this divide down not the center. There's a divide down the middle, but off to the left. And I don't want to do that with two different pieces of pattern paper because the collection that I'm working with doesn't have a lot of variations in the pattern. This particular collection is, I believe, the Rainbow Dots and Rainbow Stripes by Sunny Studios. Yes. Which is a really super fun collection because it has these really good basic patterns to it, like they're dots and stripes. But it means that you put a stripe paper with a stripe paper and the stripes don't line up and it looks a little awkward. It just meant that I wanted to be a bit more creative about how I create that second pattern. And it was a great opportunity to show off the stencils. So I had used a finger dauber, hoping that I would create just that area, just those bones being colored in, and having that small finger dauber versus a bigger blending tool would mean I have more control, but I messed it up and I accidentally sort of came over the edge. And so I just decided to make that look intentional and laid down a piece of Post-it note tape and just sort of did a bit of ink blending off to the side. And so I've created the look of having two different patterns on the background in a way without actually having two different pieces of pattern paper. I think that even though it was a mistake, I'm very happy that I did it because I really like how that look turned out. And that piece of Post-it note tape that you use can be used over and over again. Just make sure that it dries first because Post-it note paper, I find, stays wet kind of long. It just takes a really long time to dry. But you could use printer paper, and in fact, it might be better because it wouldn't take as long to dry. The ink doesn't sit on top of it the way it does Post-it note paper. Here is here's the other stamp set. Again, I colored the images off screen. I decided to color the little puppy on the left like a Yorkie. I don't know what it was supposed to be. If it was supposed to be a different dog, let me know in the comments, or if you have an idea of a different way to color it. But I think because of the bow, it just reminded me of a Yorkie. So this woof die cut is also from the banana split level. So, that's not available anymore, but you could easily replace it with a different sentiment. I just wanted to show some of the banana split stuff so that if you have that, you could figure out how to incorporate it. For me, I guess using dies should sometimes be fairly obvious, but I actually wasn't quite sure how I would use them. And then the more I try to force myself, I was I'm going to make a point to use them. The more that I made a point to use them, the more ideas I came up with for them. This is also one of the sketches. Yeah, it's the last sketch from Robin's craft room. And it's a very simple sketch, which I actually kind of liked and worked really well with this pattern paper collection because, again, there's not a lot of different patterns. There is the straight across stripe and the diagonal stripe and then the polka dots. But I also only got 3 different colors. So there's this greenish, what do you call that? Like a turquoise color blue, like a blue-green, a blue, and a green. And so not a lot of variation. And I did consider that when I colored my dogs, which are mostly neutral, but I made a blue bow because I knew there was a lot of blue pattern paper involved. I often work on this white graph paper, and sometimes I remember to link it in the video description, and sometimes I don't. But the only reason I use it is so that my background is bright white and reflects my lights. But because it's paper, it gets dirty really easily, and I'm trying not to waste a whole bunch of paper. So I keep extra scraps of it underneath, and you could do this with things that you accidentally print and stuff too. So that way, when you are working, you can just kind of get the extra ink on that. And I use them a few times, as you can see, so that piece of scrap paper is already dirty. It already has been used, but I keep using it again until it is, just completely covered, or it's so ratty looking it doesn't look so good on camera, and then I'll just use it when I'm not on camera crafting. But just a tip to use up those things rather than always using a brand new sheet. And yeah, if you like to have those work surfaces, because I know Simon Says Stamp came out with one of them a couple years ago and they became really popular, but also reusable work surfaces are great. I hear the Tim Holtz mat is awesome, but it's glass, so it will reflect light funny. And the same thing with my Ranger craft sheet. It just, light bounces off it in an odd way. So if you're ever wondering why crafters don't use those awesome reusable mats all the time, it's partly because of that. Anyway, I decided to add some pattern to the 2 strips, just like I kind of did before. And this is the Bones stencil that was included in this kit. And it allowed me to add a little bit of extra interest. This time, I am not following any included sketches. I am just basing this off of chunks of pattern paper that were left from making things that went with the sketches. And that'll be kind of this continuous theme that you see throughout this video. Make a few cards from sketches and work with what is left over from that process. So I'm just going to layer this here. I'm going to use a lot of foam tape to pop different elements up. And that's mostly because these cards are a bit on the simpler side because I'm making a lot of them. And because they're very pattern paper heavy, I'm not doing a lot of cool techniques. But I also do personally consider the fact that it takes me a while to color these images. I am adding some depth and dimension to them. I'm adding careful shading and that kind of thing. So even though the card you might think, to glue down all of those elements only took you a few minutes, there's a lot of love in my coloring too. Personally, I like to think of it that way too. So it might seem like a simple card, but sometimes you think, that's such a tiny doggy. It took 10 minutes to color that for me sometimes. I don't know if it's just because I color slow, but there you go. Next up, this was like a paper collection that I was excited about because I never did the Hello Kitty. No, that's not what it's called. Kitten Smitten. I got a couple of requests to do the Kitten Smitten paper pad in one of my 6x6 tutorials because I do a lot of Doodlebug 6x6 paper tutorials, but I shied away from Kitten Smitten because overall it has a lot of more feminine colors, and the theme, or just the general look of it, errs on the side of feminine. And I make a lot of cards that go that way as well. I prefer to sometimes choose collections that have a good mix of both or are a bit more neutral. So I shied away from this particular collection. Then when I got some pieces of it, I was like, well, this is great because I can, play with the collection a little bit because it's really cute and I like it and I love all Doodlebug, but not be committed to making like a ton of very feminine cards. Then the ironic thing was, when I took these couple pieces, I was like, oh, they're not. There's like some greens and blues and grays, and they don't have to be super girly if you don't want them to be. So I made an attempt on this first card to go a more neutral way with it and use some more neutral colors. And I chose the black cat just because the other cat, I think she has like little pearls on her or something. She's a little, but also she fits in that bed that does have the pearls. Maybe that's what I'm thinking with the pearls. The collection includes a Pretty Kitty stamp set, which I do color and use on one card, but it also includes Pretty Kitty ephemera from Scrap and for Less. And this is a fun new, I don't know, this particular kit represents a couple of like fun new additions as far as I know in terms of the Scrap and for Less kits, because there are these Scrap and for Less exclusive stencils, and there's a few more stamp sets from Scrap and for Less. I just like seeing like, there's the sequins are Scrap and for Less. It's just really cool to see the Scrap and for Less company really growing through these card kits and offering you these really unique things that you can't get outside of the kits so that you can buy them with confidence and not wind up with a stencil that you might already own or stamps that you might already own, or like these little pieces of ephemera. They're not part of some larger package that you may or may not have already purchased, and they coordinate just so perfectly with it. It's just so easy to make an instant card in some ways. I mean, obviously you have to cut everything, but I don't have to color an image, and I love coloring, which I think should be pretty obvious for my channel. But I also love making cards that just kind of come together quickly, and I do a lot of just straight, pattern paper and embellishment or stickers, and so I don't know. I just personally thought it was a really fun new thing that they were doing, or not even like brand new, but just I don't know. I like it. In short. And I am making a point to use up the pieces together. Like there was that little cat dish, and I didn't really need a cat dish for that card to feel complete. But if I don't use the cat dish on that card, then I'm just gonna have this like random leftover cat dish that might never get used. So think about that when you're using ephemera or stickers and elements like that. How can I just pop on this one last one, this little extra star, heart, or little things like that too. So next up, I am in collection 4, which includes the Dots and Stripes by Echo Park and the Santoro Girl with Cat, plus shares that dog cat sticker sheet that you haven't seen yet, because I didn't really lose it, because you'll see it eventually, but I didn't realize where it was. It was kind of like trapped in my cards. I don't know how to describe it. It's me. I could not find the sticker sheet in the cardstock, even though I had looked through it, and I think it just kind of got like static clinged to something. So make sure you look for that sticker sheet, because they are super cute, and I'm going to make a bunch more cards with them towards the end. We're getting towards the end of the video. This Santoro Girl is adorable, and I realized that she probably should have been colored a little bit different. Like, I think her hat was supposed to like be her being a cat, so like maybe it shouldn't have been pink, but I really wanted to play off the pinks and green pattern paper that I got as part of this collection kit. So I colored her very pink and green and then just made her cat a neutral gray and her hair a neutral black. But she's super tricky to color. She's adorable, but takes so long because she has really fine lines, and so it's very easy to get outside the lines. And I just want to mention that because if you're feeling frustrated while trying to color her, like, it's not only you, and be patient with it because she's adorable and she's worth it. But I made just one card with her for this particular video, but I look forward to coloring her again. And there are some Santoro stamps that are larger, but they all have those fine lines. And so I just mostly mean, like, don't get discouraged by that. It is a tricky thing. I'm moving back in the collections because with that stamp being tricky and me not being able to find the sticker sheet, I was a little bit like not sure what to do with that particular collection for a minute. So I just kind of popped back over to a different collection, and I had this cat colored from the collection. I could have also used stamps from the banana split level. I do try to limit a little bit what I do with the banana split level in these videos just because I know not everyone gets that or it becomes sold out first, and so I want to make sure you have a variety of ideas. I chose the meow meow you're perfect meow little sentiment thing there, and I think this card would look adorable without the meow meow, so if you don't have that banana split level, you'll be good to go. But it was fun to use those and to have that little bit of extra like fun to it. And I did cut them out of the pattern paper. I like that because of the small patterns, you can cut things out like words and it's not hard to read. I also used Stick It adhesive for the backs of those to make them easier to adhere down. And I just realized, I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit rough. I have been sick for like a week, which is one of the other reasons that this video is coming out much later. I would have been hoping to get it to you sooner, but my voice has been, I teach as well. So I use my voice a lot. And when I'm sick, I'm really susceptible to losing my voice, and I can't do my job if I don't have my voice. So I just apologize for this video being a little bit later, and if my voice sounds a bit rough in it, and it will probably get more rough as the video goes on. Again, hopefully it's not too distracting or nasally or whatever. I wanted to use this other cat paw stencil. Like I said, I'd kind of like, for a minute, I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do next with this kit. But then I remembered that it has this cute stencil. And so I was like, well, at the very least, I can sort of jazz up the pattern paper with the stencil. And here I'm using the Distress Oxide inks because they blend so beautifully. But before, I was able to do blending with a Lawn Fawn ink. So use whatever inks you have. Don't think you need a particular ink unless you're doing something super fancy with a technique, because usually you don't. You can stamp with Distress Oxides, you can blend with Distress Oxides, same thing with the Lawn Fawn, the Hero Arts, the Memento. All of it works really well together. All of it works really well for similar purposes. So just get whatever colors you like, whatever colors are on sale. Build your collection in the way that works for you. One of the reasons I was inspired to go back to is that I realized I could use these sentiments with the sticker sheet that I had finally found. So I basically combined that previous idea where I did the couple of words with the sentiment, and then I'm just going to add the sticker as an embellishment as opposed to adding a colored image. Because once I found those stickers, I was like, well, I can make like 20 new cards because I don't have to color anything. I'm just going to use these cute stickers. Also, I totally stamped "You're Perfect" crooked. And that's okay. Like the kids who I give these to are not going to complain that any stamping is crooked. And I just like to point those things out because sometimes we can get so discouraged when we're like, oh, everything's glued down and then I messed it up. It's not messed up. It's just, it's handmade. So I'm also going to go back to this collection again. I didn't mention before, I had the pink and green, which I've used 2 times. There was also orange and yellow. And I was having a hard time envisioning how this was all going to come together because the pink didn't really go with the orange and yellow in my brain. But now that I had found that sticker pack, I was ready to go. So I created another version of that very first sketch that I used all the way back at the beginning, the Mojo Monday sketch. And it's a little bit different because I'm not really using the circle and I'm not using like the rounded corners, and my yellow piece is much wider than the green piece in the sketch and blah, 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 but I'm inspired by it. And I want you to feel encouraged to do the same thing. You can use sketches to inspire you without following them exactly. See what you like about the sketch. Think about what works about the sketch, and then adapt those elements. I was tempted to use the You're Perfect again because this was more one of the cat collections, but it was too wide for what I'd already decided. However, there was this hello sentiment in, I believe this is the Banana Split stamp set again, but there's so many sentiments in all of the stamp sets. You can find one that works. There was a couple like birthday themed ones, and I'm just avoiding that because, again, it's not the kind of cards that I tend to make. But they are great sentiments, and I'm sure you all will find uses for them, and I will too in the future. So I can finish off both of these cards super quick by just picking two adorable little doggies to pair up together. In the sticker sheet, it seems like there's like a dog that's the same but facing the opposite way for a lot of them. And so you can kind of use that to make two of a very similar card by just switching the positions of the dogs. Also here, I'm using those teeny tiny bone stickers, because as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to like consciously use those little accessory pieces. Like I use the cat bowl, I'm using the bone stickers, because if I don't make a point to use them early on, I get to the end and I'm left with a bunch of teeny tiny bone stickers and nothing else. Here is where I'm going to finish with the video of it, although I've made a lot of these cards off screen, because here you see I'm flipping through cards that aren't on the video, because the video is already ridiculously long. It can get longer forever and ever, but I'm not even doing anything particularly worth mentioning. I'm just sort of like piecing together fun pieces of pattern paper to create those scrap cards and adding stickers to them, or I'm recreating a similar card just with a sticker instead of a colored image. So you can also see underneath what's sort of left of the kit. This time I didn't use any sequins, guys. I'm like, I feel so bad about not using them because they're really pretty, but there's like no pattern paper left. I kind of showed you those scraps there. It's like it. But I have all this really awesome cardstock, which is super high quality, will definitely get used in my craft stash. And like I said, all the adorable sequins. There's like some little other embellishments. There's a black glaze pen. But what's so much fun about when you finish these card kits, they're not really finished, is that you have the stencils, the stamps, the die cuts, all of that left to build your stash. So if you're newer to crafting and you're not really sure where to start, I'm a big fan of kits. I mean, I have a ridiculous craft stash because I've been crafting for, I don't know, almost like 15 years. So, and even then, I love card kits because I love that idea of like making a bunch of fun, like one-off cards while being able to build my stash at what is usually an awesome price. You know, if I were to buy all the stuff individually, I'm probably going to spend a lot more. Here's a couple of the cards as a sort of just like flash through, a little bit slower though than what I had just fed you through, but I will leave you links to Scrappin' for Less so you can purchase this kit if you're interested, to their sketch page, and so you can get those resources, to my card drive resources page so you can find out more about donating your cards, and to any other supplies that I used in the video today. Thank you so much for watching. I know these videos are super long, but I hope that you enjoyed it and were inspired. Please subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching. Bye.